I bet I perked back up for ZZ Top.
Let's go to Steve in Pittsburgh. Hey, Steve, you're on the wrap-up show.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
That's good. Hey, speaking of Artie there, on Friday for the master tape, it was like January 8th of 98, and it was the first time Artie was on. And it was actually Norm Macdonald, and they pulled Artie out from, like, the green room.
Right.
How did you get from there, to where you are now? I mean, you were a great guest at the time, but, it just really seemed like there was a lot in between there.
That's all, again, I credit all that to the great Gary Dell'Abate. After that appearance, I came back in with Norm because I told a bunch of loser stories that Norm liked. Norm liked that I took the attention away from him, and Howard liked that I had loser stories that I was willing to be honest about. And I came back in when Dirty Work actually came out in June of 98, and then me and Norm did a sitcom together. We came back in another 3 times to promote that, and I had, clearly a whole closet of loser stories. And then when Jackie left, it's all about timing, man, in life. The Norm Show got canceled just as Jackie was leaving, and there was a rotation of comics sitting in, and Gary was very receptive to having me sit in because I had come in with Norm and gave me a couple of days.
I actually remember the word was out with sort of the managers and agents that we were just putting people on.
And that was a big thing in the comedy community. Like, to anyone who represented a stand-up was like, holy shit, for the plugs alone.
I mean, people got to remember that Joe Rogan sat in that seat for a while, that Kimmel and Adam Carolla sat in that seat for a week together. King of All Blacks, we would try. I remember Howard and I sat down and we said, there's no rules. Anybody that we think is funny. I have a friend that I grew up with that Howard's met a bunch of times. He was best man at my wedding.
Right.
I was like, let him sit in for a couple of days. He didn't because he had to go to work. But we were open to anything. But I remember Conan Smith, who's one of your booking agents.
Still is my stand-up agent. Great guy.
And he's such a good guy. And he called me up. It wasn't like any high sell or anything. He just said, hey, you remember Artie Lang? And I said, yeah. And he goes, he'd like to come in and sit in. I remember when I brought it up to Howard, we both had a good feeling about it because we remembered Artie having good appearances on the show. But what we should really talk about, Artie, is how you got from the green room to the show the first time, which Artie and I talk about off the air all the time. And Artie says it's really like an interesting look into the mechanics of how the show works. I go into the green room. Norm's there. And we had been, every time Norm was on, we kept asking him about, who he was fucking. And there was a supermodel that he was, linked to. And he was
it was in the gossip columns. He was linked to Elle McPherson.
Yeah. So, in fact, one time I even called her while he was on, and she didn't want to come on the air. So I could tell Norm was getting annoyed with her line of questioning, and I always felt like, not that he brought Artie for that reason, but I remember going to the green room, and he goes, hey, you should talk to Artie.
That's totally why he brought him.
He goes, I go, Norm, what's up, man? What have you been up to? He goes, good. You should talk to Artie. Artie punched his manager. So I go, what are you talking about? So Artie starts to tell me the story that just gets more and more, fantastic about, punching a cop and going to jail and the orange jumpsuit and a manager. And Norm's like, he punched his manager and then he punched the cop. So Norm's egging him on. So I soak in this whole story, and now I have 5 minutes during commercial break to run in and sort of regurgitate the story, which Artie has now seen me do 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And I go, listen, Norm's with this guy, and listen to the story, bang, bang, bang. And I was like, all right, let him sit on the couch. Right. And then Artie sat on the couch, and then to his credit, Artie knows how to tell a story.
Well, it was almost like, what am I going to do? Backtrack at that point, and every.
I think I do remember going back into the green room though, and saying to you, hey, would you be cool telling that story there? I didn't throw him under the bus completely.
I was such a big fan. I mean, look, my greatest compliment to how big the Stern Show is look, by that appearance, I had been on Mad TV for 2 years. I had done Conan O'Brien. I think I did Hollywood Squares for a week. I did a movie. That appearance, I had buddies I went to high school with call me up and said, you got into show business? I mean, they didn't know until I did your show. Right. And I wasn't about to fucking, backstep on a Coke story on the Stern Show. I was about to tell it the whole way.
But then Artie came and sat in on the show. We said, yeah, let's have Artie come and sit in. And he came and he sat in. And how did it work, Artie? Did you come in and do a couple of days right away?
And it was... Again, the first time I sat in, the Norm Show wasn't definitely canceled yet.
Right.
I had to wait, and that was a big topic. Next week, Artie finds out if the show's canceled or not. I thought I was going to have to go back to L.A. And the other big topic was the guy I was on the Norm Show with, Max Wright, had literally the day before... He was photographed in the National Enquirer blowing a homeless black guy
and doing
smoking crack.
That's the dude from Alf, right?
Max from Alf.
If you don't know who Max Wright is, this guy was the father on Alf with glasses, balding, older guy.
He's a brilliant. Look, I worked with the guy for 2 years. He's one of my favorite people ever. We never knew he had gay tendencies. We knew he was a hippie who had drug problems. And it's at the show Alf. Between him and that dude Ben Stiller played, the writer, there must have been heavy partying going on. There was a famous story where this guy, Max Wright, in a coke binge, found the puppet Alf and was beating the shit out of it. And security had to pull Max off of him. Like, I'll kill him. Like, Max was this brilliant, genius Shakespeare actor, and every week on national TV, a puppet's getting the best of him. With like a ball joke, like, okay, Baldy, you know. So he got coked up and lost it and beat the shit out of the Alf. They had to get a new puppet. He tore it apart. So we knew those stories at the Norm Show. And then the day before I sitting on the fucking Howard Stern Show, a guy I worked with for 2 years is photographed smoking crack with a homeless black guy and blowing it.
Right. And you have to, the important part of the story is that it wasn't a story in the National Enquirer. It was a story in the National Enquirer supported by photographs.
Right. It was
which was crazy. I mean, they didn't actually have the picture of him blowing the guy, but there was a picture of him and this black dude sitting on a couch like freebasing.
So Norm knew I was coming in to sit in on the show, and Norm, the night before, goes, hey, man, what do you think Stern will talk to you about? So, you know, I got in to sit one of those days, and I just let it all hang out. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to be honest here about everything. And from the end of the first show, Gary pulled me into his office and could not have been nicer. He goes, look, for us, this is a home run, man. And you immediately gave me, before the second day, you gave me 2 more dates the next week. And then it came out that the Norm Show got canceled, and I was free as a bird, contract-wise.
We were trying out all sorts of stuff, and when Artie sat in, it just fit right away. It's one of those things where it literally is like you go to a store and you try on a shoe, and we're like, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. And then when Artie sat in, it just fit perfect.
Well, at the time, it was a lot of some heavy hitters like Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, Jeff Ross, Fitzsimmons, Florentine, Carolla, and Kimmel were all sitting in on a regular basis. You guys tried Stuttering John one day, Vinny Favale, like you were just throwing a bunch of shit up against the wall. And when Jackie left the show, I'll never forget, I pulled into my parking spot at the Norm Show, and one of the writers heard me listening to the show. I had a convertible at the time. And he said, you know, Jackie left. He's gone. I'm like, really? Get the fuck out of here. And he goes, the rumor is, and we were all excited about this as fans of comedy, the rumor is Billy West has got the job. We thought Billy was the natural guy that the show was going to go to, and we were like, oh, my God, that's going to be the funniest show ever, just got that much funnier, was our thing.
And that's another weird footnote in the whole Billy West story, which probably didn't come up on the special. Billy had been gone from the show for a while, and, you know, he left, and we had always liked him, and I had a feeling there was some weird tension, but could never figure out what it was. And Howard said, you know, give Billy a call. Ask Billy if he wants to sit in for a couple of days. And Billy was wildly successful doing the voiceover thing, but I knew that, you know, that he really enjoyed working on the show. And I called up, and I didn't know how to get a hold of Billy, so I got a hold of his wife, and his wife told me, she said, listen, Billy's moving forward. He's not moving backwards. Oh, wow. So I never, but in all fairness, I never got to speak to Billy. And at the time, there was some weirdness going on with him and his wife, and I don't know what happened. But I do have to say, Billy, after the special ran this past week, Billy put up some of the nicest things about all of us on his website. Yeah. Just what a great time he had working with us. And, you know, I really remember him with nothing but fondness, man. It was such a great time to have him.
Billy West is not a stand-up comic. As a matter of fact, Billy's got famous rants that I've heard from agents he used to deal with why he hates stand-up comedy, which is why that he might have a point. For a stand-up comic, this show is Mecca. It's Mecca. Plugs on the Stern Show, that's it, man. You go from opening to headlining. And that's why when it went out that people were sitting in that chair, agents and managers just wanted to get their guys one day on the show for Howard to read plugs. So Billy not being a stand-up comic, maybe, you know, the going forward thing is the right thing to say for her. But my God, we all thought it's going to be Billy West every day, man. That's going to be amazing.
And, you know, you bring up an interesting point, too. So everybody always talks about the money that Jackie walked away from, which was substantial. You know, over a 5-year period, it was a substantial amount of money. But the other thing is, Jackie had negotiated into his contract at K-Rock that Howard had to plug whatever was that he needed to plug.
8 a.m.
Twice a day at the end of the show, and sometime in the heart of the show. And Stuttering John and I used to sit around and say, if I were doing appearances and I get one plug at 8 o'clock in the morning during the week, that I could like double my price.
Forget it.
And Jackie, he would kill me. Jackie had this he would write everything down. Everything was handwritten on paper. All his jokes, everything was all handwritten on paper. And Jackie would put his plug up, and he would write on the bottom. I would see he would rotate the time. He would put 7 o'clock one day, 7:30 the next day, 8 o'clock the next day, and sometimes like Howard would be on a roll, and he would just like crowbar the plug up. Like Howard would be on a roll,
man.
And Jackie would throw the plug up and like sort of point to it, and and sometimes he would mention that we didn't get to it quick enough. It was just a funny thing. But that plug,
golden egg, an 8 a.m. plug back then, and I think at 8 a.m. the research showed that at 8 a.m. around the country it was like maybe 14 million people listening
like I said,
to the show. So that is like money. It's fucking better than money.
John and I would say if we could just get a plug once a week at that time, we'd be fucking rich.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got to talk about the Anatomy Awards with Mr. Skin, who's been sitting there so patiently, the Academy Awards with Ellen, and, of course, what it takes to be a regular caller on the Howard Stern Show. You're listening to the Wrap-Up Show only on Howard 100 and Howard 101.